Who needs the breakfast of champions when you can have the breakfast of a miner? E is for egg whites, which are probably among the last things to come to mind when I say cocktail ingredient. The idea is super gross to most of us 21st century people, and it is the one ingredient that I have to sell people hard on, because egg whites don't change the flavor of the drink as much as they change the texture of it. It makes a drink somewhat foamy and rich, almost like an alcoholic milkshake. But who the hell started putting eggs into drinks? Well, the real question, of course, is when did we start taking eggs out of our drinks? Whereas us 21st century types shiver in discomfort at the thought of drinking raw eggs, our 19th century brethren and sisterin drank eggs all the time, and most often with booze. And not just the whites, they downed them yolks and all, like goddamn Rocky. In fact, eggs plus booze was so common and so commonly accepted as a normal thing that a popular breakfast for folks doing physical labor at the time was 2 raw eggs cracked into a beer with a shot of whiskey on the side. So rad. They called it a miner's breakfast. Actually. Who needs the breakfast of champions when you can have the breakfast of a miner? We skeeve at drinking eggs now because we're worried they'll make us sick. But previous to the 20th century, people drank raw eggs for their health. The idea had something to do with Middle Age and Renaissance notions about health, in which all things in the world were one of 4 types and you had to balance the types out, and eggs balanced out alcohol for some medieval reason, whatever. So, the next time you see a Pink Lady or a Ramos Gin Fizz on the menu, give them a try. Or, of course, the miner's breakfast is a great start to any day. O is for Orjat, which I may dislike saying even more than liqueur, but which I love as a cocktail ingredient because it is one of the secret syrups that makes many a tiki drink a tiki drink. And I fucking love tiki drinks. Orjat is an almond syrup, which are 2 words that I don't often say together. I don't have too much to say about the syrup itself. I just needed something for O, and I didn't want to do the old fashioned, or God help me, orange wine. So I will use Orjat as a symbol of what makes tiki drinks so unique and special in the drinking world. I happen to live in Los Angeles, the birthplace of tiki drinking culture, and so have been able to sample many a fine and powerful tiki drinks in bars old and new. Sadly, the bar that started it all on Hollywood Boulevard in the 30s, Don the Beachcomber, is no more. But you can still visit the Tonga Hut and the Tiki Tea, 2 places where I have been very drunk, and which both opened in the late 50s during the original wave of tiki madness sparked by Don the Beachcomber and the early but ultimately more successful Oakland copycat bar, Trader Vic's. In a chicken and egg sort of situation, these 2 bars helped fuel and were fueled by a post-war pop culture obsession with all things South Pacific. But eventually, that faded, and except in stalwarts like the Tonga Hut and the Tiki Tea, the tiki drink became synonymous with greasy Chinese food and headaches. You may still get headaches from all the sugar and the booze, but it will be well earned and much more palatable than the imitation Mai Tais and Scorpion Bowls most of us are familiar with. And should you decide to become a tiki enthusiast yourself, you can now find all the almond syrups and fruit juices you need on the internet, and hopefully also at an authentic, hard-working, but easygoing tiki bar in your area. O is for Orjat, but also really for tiki. Okale Maluna. W is for whiskey. There are a lot of rules for how whiskey can be made and what it can be called. Most of these rules established for reasons similar to the ones that govern wine, locking in a certain style so that no one else can make it that way. I'm partial to American whiskey, probably because marketing works, but I'll enjoy a whiskey from just about anywhere. I've even had an Indian whiskey, which I unfortunately don't remember well because before that I had been drinking American whiskey, Wild Turkey Rare Breed, and was very drunk. But whether it comes from America or Scotland or India, all whiskeys share a few things. One, they are made from some type of grain. In Scotland, it's mostly malted barley. In America, it's mostly corn. In Canada, it's mostly blended for some reason, and et cetera, et cetera. And secondly, all whiskey, White Lightning notwithstanding, must be aged. This is true by law, and it's true in practice. While the earliest whiskeys in Scotland were unaged, and by all accounts awful, they discovered early on that the whiskey which had been stowed away in barrels, or even better, taken a long sea voyage, tasted way better. Like magically better. Ask a whiskey distiller today, and they'll tell you that 60 to 70% of whiskey flavor comes from the barrel. The barrel! So it's the colonialism period, as we've mentioned, and the Europeans are shipping whiskey and rum and wine and all sorts of booze barrels across the sea where they got hammered by storms, sun, and salt, where they were exposed to extreme temperatures and humidity, and were also just straight up sloshed around a lot. And when they finally opened up those barrels, after years on the sea, they realized the whiskey in particular had been aged to perfection. And it turns out that whiskey likes the tumult. It likes extreme temperature swings and sunburn and agitation. It likes these things because they encourage interaction with the barrel. Now, it's easy to take the aging process for granted with whiskey. Forget about how long it sat in a barrel before arriving on a shelf at your liquor store or in the well at your bar. But it sits in that barrel a long time. And it's time that makes it what it is. You heard the distillers. Most of the flavor comes from the barrel. So you have to give whiskey time. And in that time, the whiskey benefits from a little adventure. There's a whole nother barrel story about Buffalo Trace and a tornado that we don't have time to get into now, so I'll just point you to the article where I read it, The New Science of Old Whiskey by Wayne Curtis in The Atlantic. Check it out, it's great. Suffice it to say here, some barrels survived a tornado and the whiskey inside was bomb. And I love that about whiskey. Not to throw liquor shade again, but hashtag liquor shade. Unlike vodka, which aspires to this eternal, delicate consistency, whiskey is about time and chance and impurities. It's about being lashed to the mast and flung around the sea a bit and coming out the better for it. And I not only admire that, I aspire to it, and I find it beautiful. So W is for whiskey, my drink of choice for this ride. Cheers. You know what? Yeah, let's do the whole berry, because there were some moments.